Cool. Hello and welcome everybody to our panel discussion on collaboration and innovation in the food system. I'm going to share my screen. My name is Kubiena. I'm one of the two partners of Konsultori. We are organizing this panel discussion, and we are happy that our three panelists are here. I will introduce them in a minute. Our panel discussion today is part of the ViennaUP. The ViennaUP is the International Startup Festival in the city of Vienna, which started yesterday. Yesterday was a bit of a rainy day for the very first day of the festival, but still we had a good start. And the topic of our panel is why the collaboration of diverse actors is the secret sauce of food system transformation. As I said, Petra and me will guide you through our session. We will start with a short introduction about why we think this topic is relevant and important, and why we think collaboration is a key ingredient for food systems transformation. So we'll talk about that for a few minutes. Then I will introduce our panelists, and then we go into the panel discussion, which will take around, I would say, like an hour, 60 minutes, maybe a bit more. And then we have enough room for a Q&A session, where I would like to invite you, our audience. By the way, thanks for coming and joining. I would like to invite you to ask your questions to the panelists, to us together, around cooperation and collaboration and innovation in the food system. Okay. So the topic is food system transformation. Why do we think that the food system needs to be transformed? The point is that the food system, our food system today, the contemporary food system, was developed and has emerged around 50 years ago, where the point was, how do we feed a growing world population? And our food system today has proved that it can do that, but at the same time, it produces outcomes which are, I would say, less desirable with regards to climate, with regards to biodiversity, with regards to malnutrition. I actually borrowed a fact sheet by FiBL, the organization which Petra is a part of. And some might say, or actually many agree, there's a shared understanding that the current food system cannot be fixed, but it really needs a more radical and substantial transformation. And we believe, that's our assumption, that's our point of departure for this discussion, that cooperation between diverse actors is one of the key ingredients for managing this transformation. So maybe, Petra, you want to take over?
Yes, for sure. And as we have in our title, the secret sauce, let's explain a little bit what we mean by secret sauce. In general, this is some ingredient, not the most important one, but some major ingredient in this transformation that might bring success. And we see collaboration as a secret sauce in this whole transformation process. And when we look at collaboration overall, there are many reasons why collaboration might work for this transformation process. So happy that we have excellent panelists today who will discuss all those dimensions of collaboration, but just to mention one or two. If we collaborate, we can pool resources, we can split the labor, have better results, we can reduce risk, or what I like, for example, a lot is this peer accountability. The moment we collaborate, we promise, we deliver, because there's another one watching us. So many dimensions in collaborations and reasons why we should collaborate in this very complex process of food transformation. The collaboration itself is so nice because it doesn't just make us maybe faster, but the more important topic is that it is about synergy. So if we work together, the outcome should be more than its parts, so we can achieve more together. And we believe that this is really important in this food transformation that's coming up.
Yeah, and I mean, we can see that collaborations are already happening between various actors in the food system. So that's kind of like a promising sign. But as Petra said already, collaboration alone is no silver bullet. And at the same time, we have to recognize and have to think about that once diverse actors start to cooperate, or even if it's like similar actors, that's not easy. Cooperation is work, and just by good intentions and by deciding, yes, I would like to cooperate, it's not really happening. So there are diverse agendas in play, and cooperation, successful cooperation and sustainable cooperation needs planning, organizing, following up, sometimes also making compromises. And I guess that's also what we are going to talk about today.
Yeah, and collaboration can come in very different forms, can be on a contractual basis, one-time stuff, sometimes even without a contract. There can be longer forms of collaboration like strategic alliances or even joint companies like a joint venture, can be direct investments or even two companies merging or one company acquiring another one. So this is a quite diverse field, can be very close, can be a little bit more loose. And also here, I'm very curious about our panelists' opinion today. Just a quick word about us as Konsultori. We are doing that exercise today together in the panel. Our vision is to help build and cultivate an ecosystem of 10,000 competent entrepreneurs by 2030. We are on a good track. We are an award-winning consultancy sitting in Vienna. We are Global Ecosystem Hero 23. And we have four main areas of expertise. It's strategic growth, financing, organization design, and business development. And we do this mainly with startups and fast-growing SMEs.
Cool. So again, the topic of our discussion is why the collaboration of diverse actors is the secret sauce of food system transformation. We are lucky to have three actors of the food system, and rather diverse ones, here today, our panelists. Thanks so much for joining and for agreeing to participate. We have Wolfgang Fojtl here. He's the CEO and owner of VERIVAL Bio, which is an organic or a manufacturer of organic breakfast and breakfast items. Exists for 30 years, as far as I know, and is very successful in the German-speaking countries in the EU, but also going beyond that into the Asian markets. Secondly, we have Lisa Reiss here, who is the co-founder of Smiling Foods. And Smiling Food is working on the development of a sugar alternative, all natural. And I guess she will tell us more about her experience. And then we have Richard Petrasek here, who works for FiBL. FiBL is the Research Institute for Organic Agriculture in Austria, Germany, Switzerland, but also in France. And Richard works there as a sustainability expert and researcher. Yes. With regards to the flow and how we want to have the panel develop is, if you have questions, please post them into the Q&A section here in Zoom. And if you have a question to one of our panelists, you can also write that down. Otherwise, we will see and distribute your questions towards the end of the discussion. Yeah, so much about housekeeping, and then I would say, let's go into the discussion. And the first question is very general. So like, what do you think are the benefits and what's the key purpose from your point of view in the food system of cooperation and collaboration? And Lisa, if that's okay, I will start with you. So Lisa is the founder of a startup. And maybe you could share with us like your experience with cooperation. Why do you think you want to cooperate with other actors? And what is your take on that?
Sure, I'm happy to be here. So just a few words, maybe so that it's easier to follow on why we do what we do. So we're a food/biotech startup. We've been existing since 3 years now and did 2.5 years of full R&D. I would say what we do is kind of the first natural sugar substitute that does not have any side effects, but that you can use one-to-one instead of sugar. So we're kind of having application-specific sugar substitutes. And for us, collaborations make therefore a lot of sense because it's a lot of use cases we need to test our sugar substitute on. So you can imagine that, for example, since sugar is a molecule, you cannot really replace it that easy in each matrix. So for example, in jam, as our use case, it works completely different because sugar plays a different role than in bakery goods or chocolate. So for us, collaborations make a lot of sense in order to try out our prototypes. And because it should be a one-to-one solution, what matters a lot to us is that it works on a high industrial scale. Now, how can you test it as a startup if you don't have the facilities? And I would also say that the food tech ecosystem in Austria is kind of leaking behind when you compare it to other European markets and countries. So it's quite hard to test it because you don't have the infrastructure available. So what we did is that we tried to reach out to corporates to test it there. But then a factor is kind of the IP. So therefore, it's quite a tricky question. And I would say why it's still important for us is because you can actually really test it. You get quite easy and fast, if you have the right companies you're working with, feedback that is super hands-on. You can go to your pilot clients, for example, and you can check out if it actually works at that industrial scale, because maybe if I'm doing jam or if I'm doing cookies in our in-house kitchen lab, it might give us different results than if I really do it with 20 kilos, with 100 kilos or 200 kilos. So therefore, it's important because there's not a facility in Austria where you could test it other than that. So you are kind of relying on corporates to try it out because otherwise you lose on speed. And that's also then the negative part. But I would also say in general why it makes sense, maybe also for corporates that may be listening, is that corporates also have kind of the high goal to always stay competitive within their huge market. Even though they might have a huge or good market share, the market kind of never stops growing. And that also kind of opens up opportunities for new products, but also for growing their own products. And also consumer wishes are kind of shifting, and their demands not only always reflect on the supply, but also sometimes they evolve out of trends. And those trends are kind of hard to hit sometimes for corporates because they're quite slow, not only due to their own regulations, but also due to their kind of bureaucracy they're having in-house. So therefore, I would say that the cooperation does not only enable you to share knowledge, because for us as a startup, we don't have the industry knowledge for that many years, because not every startup has a founder that has 30 years of experience. So therefore, it's quite important because it gives you the opportunity to learn from corporates how things are done and to avoid mistakes. On the other hand, I would say it gives corporates the opportunity to try out new things they would otherwise not have the braveness to do. So I would say that's also a very important thing, because we can take the risks that corporates might be too afraid to take, and we can try out stuff faster. Also, I would say that the mindset of a startup and the team that works in the startup is quite different. So you also bring together two different maybe working styles. And if you have built up a good framework, I can think that it can be a major driver for innovation. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you so much. You already touched on very many issues. I think some of them we will be able to pick up later on. Maybe, Wolfgang, I move on to you. I know from our previous discussions that you have experience with various kinds of cooperations and collaborations in the food sector. So maybe you can give us your take on why you believe that cooperations are relevant and are important.
Well, actually, my experience and my background is very different. You know, I'm an entrepreneur for the last 30 years. And when I'm talking about collaboration, you know, I'm more or less talking about M&A, frankly speaking, you know. So I'm talking about the question, what does it mean, you know, to get a partner in, and how does it work, or how is it not working? So I think in my experience, collaboration, you know, at least in the context which we are discussing it today, is largely a question of how can a small company collaborate with a large company? At least that's what I have done over the last 20 years. So to me, it's not so much about how can two equals, more or less, which means two companies with more or less the same size, work together. Yeah. So why is this so important? I think each partners, as long as they have, let's say, as long as they're equal partners, they have a natural balance of power and interest. And this usually somehow, balances them out quite well. Yeah. Of course, this also has many pitfalls, and to my understanding, this is, let's say, quite a different dynamic. Yeah. But I would like to focus a little bit more on the question of how can, let's say, a little one work with a big one. Yeah. And as I said in the beginning, this corresponds to my, let's say, personal background, which I've experienced many times. So I think the key question, at least in my area, is what exactly is the motivation for cooperation? So why am I looking for a partner, and what exactly do I want? And what I've seen first, and many times it's many times about making money, frankly speaking, So I've met a lot of entrepreneurs who have this goal of making money as quick as possible. Yeah, and they will probably be ready to do whatever is needed. Yeah, which is fine. Okay, and I can definitely accept it, but it's a different. It's a very special issue. Let's say it like this. I think secondly, there's probably a more idealistic approach. Yeah, just to make an idea bigger and to build something long term. This was my idea, frankly speaking. Yeah. I think there's a way of cooperation where it's more about gaining stability, which is a different issue as well. So there's for me the third form. And I do believe there's a fourth form, if your idea is so complex that you can probably only bring it to life with the help of a partnership. Yeah. I don't know if this is the case with Lisa's project, but it looks pretty difficult. So that's maybe a different issue as well. So to me, the first question is, what is your intention? What is your motivation? Yeah, and what exactly do you need? So that's more or less, let's say, my background. And I think, I made a lot of experiences with two, with this more idealistic approach to make an idea bigger, to build something long term. And therefore, I think this has a certain framework. I think it's quite interesting to look at this and to understand, how can this work and what does it need?
Mm-hmm. Okay, thanks a lot. We'll also come back to some of the questions you raised now a bit later on. But Richard, let's move on to you. So you work for a research institution, but I know that you also collaborate with other actors in the food system. So can you give us your take and your experience on this collaboration between various actors in the food space?
Yeah, thank you, Michael. First, I thought I'm some kind of alien in that round, but that's not correct. As a researcher and as a scientist, and the work that the FiBL does is some kind of translation and acting as a how could I say, as some kind of you said, Michael, I'm here for the whole ecosystem. So I think that's the reason why I'm here. And sustainability, when I'm working on sustainability as I do, there is no borders. There is no singular steps. There's always connections. There are all interdependencies that I have to think about. So when you took the wording Research Institute of Agricultural Organic Agriculture, the FiBL, it sounds like we are on the basis of agriculture, but we have to think about food system, and food system have to think about agriculture. So at the first step, and collaboration is one kind of what I have seen on farms, what I've seen along the value chain on processing companies and so on, is one kind of, yes, thinking about having more income. Yes, that's correct. But mostly driven by interested in the others, and also not want to say it simple, to be alone with all these challenges that we are focusing now. And so I think that science, whether it is basic research or applied research, as in my case, can contribute a lot to this. In my work at FiBL Austria, we often have to deal with the entire value chain and its environment, the framework condition, and also the political aspects. And in various projects, many possibilities have been demonstrated, and obstacles that were actually based on, I think, misinterpretation and maybe ignorance of the others have been eliminated through this. And what is, as I said, ecosystem guy, I'm here. Also, in addition to market logic, for example, existence in a free market economy, there are major social and economic challenges in our time, which are primarily based on the state of our environment on planet Earth. And agriculture is also the forefront of the food system value chain. And this produces the goods that come further in the process. But here too, people tend to forget that agriculture is also 100% dependent on natural resources, such as water, soil, and its availability, quality, and then clean air, surely. And it should therefore be a logic conclusion for the food industry and every corporation to preserve and protect natural resources. Every product in the food system begins in the soil, water, or air. And I think that's very important to say from my side. And I think collaboration by themselves could help to feel not alone and to strengthen each other. And that makes absolutely sense as a first statement from my side. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I would like to continue our discussion looking at and you touched upon some of those already, on the key challenges which organizations, whether they are small or bigger companies or ecosystem players, are facing when collaborating. And Wolfgang, I would like to start with you, because in our previous discussion, you mentioned two collaborations of yours, one with a very big player and the current one with a smaller player compared to your organization. And maybe you can elaborate a bit on the challenges you have been facing in either these situations or in others which you encountered.
Yeah, sure. Well, I guess, you know, some in the audience probably don't know it, you know, VERIVAL has been part of Kellogg Group, yeah, between 2016 and 2020. Just to give you a brief, you know, history of our company, it was founded in the early 90s by the Swarovski family. I took the company over in 2012. And yes, I had the idea to scale it with a large partner. Yeah, so this was really my intention. This was what I was going for, and I was really very ambitious and working on this. And frankly speaking, Kellogg was really my dream partner. This was really like a marriage. Okay, I mean, Kellogg was the number one, you know, breakfast cereal company. And I had the feeling they could do so much better, you know, and we have such a great product and it could be a perfect fit for both of us. And really, you know, it was really fun because in 2015, they called me and this was really, you know, it was the biggest thing that could happen to us. You know, we have been incredibly happy. Mm-hmm. I will never forget the day when people from Kellogg called me and said, listen, Wolfgang would like to talk to you. Yeah. So this was really a love marriage. Okay. And I know it's a big corporation. I know we are small. I know we are completely different, but nevertheless, I had really a great feeling, you know, when it started. Well, however, you know, things came differently, you know, to many, many reasons, and more than happy, you know, to share some of our experiences which we made over the last years. But at the end, I think what I've seen is, you know, getting together a large organization with a very small organization, yeah, is, to my understanding, nearly impossible, as long as you not only have the intention to sell your company. Mm-hmm. Okay, if you want to sell it, you can more or less do whatever you want. Yeah, but let's say if you have to plan to do it together, yeah, I mean, you have to understand that the big ones, yeah, have a completely different agenda. And I'm not talking about good or bad, okay? So this is, I'm not trying to bring any value behind it. I'm just saying they have a different agenda. And getting those two things together is really very difficult. I'm not saying that it's not doable, yeah, but it's really very difficult. And at least in our case, I was really happy when I got the chance in 2020, Corona and many things like this happened, you know, to buy the company back and to be independent again. So it's a quite interesting story with a lot of learnings. And therefore, I think it's very important, you know, to see. My background is about M&A, you know, is about what does it mean to have a big one on board, you know, and is it possible to get, let's say, the same agenda on the table? Yeah? Mm-hmm. And I think this is the key issue. Yeah? Mm-hmm.
But since you mentioned with a lot of learnings, I mean, what would you say are your one or two main learnings out of this Kellogg's experience with the collaboration with a much bigger partner? What did you take away from it mainly?
Well, I believe, you know, the biggest challenge, you know, is really on the operational side. Mm-hmm. You know, it's not so much the strategic side. Yeah. Because from the strategic point of view, this has been a perfect fit, really a perfect fit. We have been organic. We have been the only organic brand in Europe. Kellogg wanted to expand into the organic market. Yeah, we have been a premium brand. You know, Kellogg has been, of course, you know, huge brands, but from a price positioning, definitely below us. So it was really, you know, when we're looking, let's say, kind of this brand triangle, you know, we have been in the top, you know, at least in terms of quality and branding and marketing. And Kellogg was this massive, you know, partner on the ground. So therefore, the strategic side was a perfect fit, you know. And every survey and every research, you know, Kellogg did, and believe me, they did a lot, yeah, before buying our company, a lot, yeah, was really, you know, giving us 100 points, you know, in every little detail. And we discussed a lot, you know, about the strategic side. We discussed a lot, yeah, about legals. You wouldn't believe how much time we have spent on legals, how much time we have spent on due diligence. But we did not talk about the operational side. Mm-hmm. We did not work on how to cooperate on a daily basis. Mm-hmm. You know, and I mean, we have distribution, we are producing. So it was key to understand how can get those two things together on the daily operation. Mm-hmm. So the key takeaway for everyone, yeah, whoever thinks, you know, about not only selling the company, because if you're selling it, you know what I mean, it's gone and then it's out and it's over. Yeah. But if you really have the plan to do it together with a big one, you have to understand what is the operation. It starts with distribution. It starts with logistics, you know, it starts with IT, it starts with finance, it starts with quality. You know, if you don't go into all these details, you will understand that in every little detail, yeah, they have a slightly different agenda. Mm. Yeah. To give you an example on quality, yeah, I mean, as probably everybody knows, you know, organic is organic, you know, and we have a lot of restrictions, okay, around organic, which we cannot do. A big corporation like Kellogg, when it comes to logistics and quality, they have a completely different approach, completely different. Yeah. So I totally believe that we have a great quality control. Yeah. But the way a big corporation is handling quality control is so different to the way we do it. Yeah. Because to give you one example, if the big ones, you know, have a quality issue, to go to their supplier, yeah, and make them responsible. If I have a quality issue, I have to fix it on my own, because my suppliers are most of the time little farmers. So what should I do with them? Yeah. So, and fixing problems in terms of Kellogg was making contract. Okay. And then they gave me a contract like this and said, sign it with your suppliers. Mm-hmm. And I said, listen, I can't do this. It's English. It's 200 pages, and they are not ready to do it. You want us, yeah, to work with the small ones. But if we want to work with the small ones, we have to accept their game, which is different. Yeah? Mm. So these are the kind of things. It is about operation, and there are so many details. And I think this is what's really the key point for me.
Okay.
Michael, may I ask a question to Wolfgang? Is that
okay? Yes, of course. Please go ahead. Sure.
Yeah, because it remembers me a lot about sustainability itself, and to talk with different actors along the value chain, along the food system. And I think in my opinion, it's more basic. It's to find the same word for the same thing is the first step, and that is mostly a big problem. The understandable of the same word. Yeah. What do I mean with let's make sustainability? And it's very interesting for me to hear, Wolfgang, about quality assurance and so on, for sure. But it starts with some simple words, and they understand completely different. When I'm talking to some farmers or I'm talking to a processor, they understand sometimes completely different things. Yeah. So it's the wording and the way of speaking. Yeah. Do you have this imagination too?
Well, definitely, yeah, of course. You know, food safety. Okay, let's take the term food safety. Okay, we have our understanding of food safety means, and Kellogg has their understanding. Yeah, of course, if we are selling a natural product, yeah, we have to accept to a certain extent, yeah, that the product itself has some problems, whatever it is, and we live with this. Okay, so we cannot get 100% clean product, and nobody expects this. Kellogg expects this because this is their agenda. But this would mean that we need pesticides. Otherwise, you know what I mean? If I'm selling an organic product and I can't use pesticides, you will probably see some little animals one day. Yeah, I mean, that's a fact. Yeah, and our customers, they can accept this pretty well, but the big corporation, that's not on their agenda. It's very hard for them to handle, and those are the things. Yeah, so therefore it is about wording, you know. And when we are talking about food safety, we both agree, you know. I mean, food has to be safe for everybody, but what does this mean in detail, you know, in our daily operation? And then you will see it's a different world. Yeah, it's a different agenda, and then you start saying, hey, listen. If you want us to do this, we have to change our products. For example, we have to use heat. I mean, Kellogg, for most of their products, they're really, you know, more or less highly processed products, which means they get a lot of heat. Yeah, we don't want to do this. You know, it destroys our product. It destroys the idea. But of course, in terms of food safety, it's maybe the better approach. Yeah, so. That's why I'm saying it's not a question of good or bad, you know what I mean? It's just a different way of working, yeah, and very different aspects.
Just one very quick follow-up question to you, Wolfgang. I'm really curious, like in 2020, I think you said when you decided to become independent again, how did Kellogg's react to that? Because you were in a seemingly dream partnership for a while. And then you come and say, okay, I want to end it again. What did they say?
Well, you know, as always, you know, it didn't came from one day to the other. So it has been a kind of process, you know, and I think we have seen over the years, 19 and 20, that things are really not that easy and not as easy as expected, you know. So let's say this kind of dream marriage, you know, had to face more and more reality. So, of course, you know, this was nothing which came from one day to the other. Well, the good thing in our case was it was 2020 and it was the pandemic, you know. And for the first time, Kellogg in Europe could see growth in their core segment. Which was an incredible driver, you know, within the corporation to change. And when you look at Kellogg today, and probably nobody is really interested, you know, in these details, but when you're looking at Kellogg today, they're a different company to the company they have been a few years ago. So they changed as a company, also due to the pandemic, you know, and for the first time they have seen a growth rate in their core segment. We have to understand the years before, they were only declining. Yeah. And at the end, we have been one of the few, you know, growing segments in general. Yeah. So in 2020, everything changed, and this gave us an opportunity. Yeah. And I think at the end of the day, we have been fine for both of us. You know what I mean? Yeah. And I think they said, well, let's go to the core, which we're really good in. Yeah. And I think they understood much more, even through the acquisitions, was that their core values, yeah, are different. Yeah. And I think it was a learning for both of us, you know. And I have to say, you know, the Kellogg people are really great people. Okay. So I'm not complaining about the team. They're really great people. And I'm still friends with many of them. But they had a different agenda, yeah, and they understood that their core values are different to ours, and that we will probably not get it together. And taking the company over and taking the brand over would probably destroy the brand. You know what I mean? It would destroy the brand. I'm not sure if we would still be in the market. Yeah. So it was more or less a question of, come on, yeah. I mean, if you take it over, you're not the right ones to do it. Yeah. And I think that's what they've seen, and that's what they have accepted.
Lisa, what do you think about what do you see as the key challenges for cooperating in your experience? I mean, you have maybe less in terms of years of experience compared to Wolfgang, but you made your lessons, and then you learned the lessons already. So what are your key takeaways from cooperating?
I mean, the thing is, I think still when you go to a lot of exhibitions, I probably talked to 50, 60, 70 people and went to quite a lot. So I can also tell about like what our challenges were, but I would also like to reflect on what Wolfgang said, because I think he has maybe he's not completely reflecting to 100% the normal corporate person we speak to, because he's also an entrepreneur by heart. And he might also have a different mindset, because what we normally speak to is the head of sales or the head of product. And it's also often the case that the CEO of a company is not the founder, which also changes their perception of what it means to collaborate with startups. And I also think it's a lot about the mindset of the people. So Wolfgang said it's very difficult. And I'm not saying it's not difficult, but I'm saying it's also a mindset thing. When you already go in with the mindset something will be difficult, it probably will, because you think it is, because you know what steps there are to make. And I think it's about to make that easier, actually. I think the thing is, and I love what you said about the legal part, because not only in MMA, but especially when you're even cooperating or you're opening up about your IP, you need a lot of NDAs. So the corporate sends you an NDA, and of course you're like not very trying to rely on what they tell you. So you also have to get your lawyer on board, and your lawyer checks it. Then you actually come with a different draft. You send them the different draft. They say, oh, I don't like that. Oh, we don't like that. Oh, we don't do that. And they send something else back, and you check again. And it takes 2-3 months. I'm not joking. It can really take a long time until you then have something that you can actually open up about it, which takes a lot of not only time, but it takes a lot of energy also to continue those talks. And also kind of the trust is already quite affected, because you can see there's a clear distrustness from startups and corporates, and maybe also the other way around. And it cannot be the case that a lot of startups or colleagues say that the lawyers often cost more than the output that you're actually getting off the corporate. So that's, of course, not how a collaboration or good collaboration works. I would also like to say about what Richard said, because I think I think especially young founders under 30 know that you have to always think about the responsibility you have. When you're building up a company or making up a new company, it should at least not damage the environment. Or it should at least offer then a societal impact. So for example, for us, it got very early clear that we need to know, okay, how or where are we sourcing our raw materials? So we are, for example, using residues from legumes to convert them into fiber, so to separate the protein from the fiber and then to use the fiber. But for example, since we have a lot of angles we're focusing on, we have on one side the food technology part, we have the food chemistry part, now we have the biotech part, because we're focusing also on the way that the sugar alcohols are not laxative anymore, because normally you can pull them in the intestine, but you cannot bind them. So we have very different angles, and their collaboration is key. And not only collaboration with corporates, but also collaboration with research institutions that have already more knowledge on that area. And I think there's like two parts. One is like the cooperation with corporates, and one is the cooperation with actual research institutions. And it can also be sometimes quite hard to reach out to them, or not to reach out to them, but to cooperate with them, because often they don't have any startup-friendly terms, meaning that, for example, if we would like to work together in a lab from the BOKU, for example, in Vienna, we would pay the exact same fee, and we would pay the exact same price than a corporate, which makes it, of course, hard to work together with them, even though we want to. And even though we thought at the beginning, oh, well, it's a research institution, it's a university, that might be open for it. But that's maybe also because of regulations not possible, but that's also making it hard. So you really need to find the right institutions that maybe are open for that too. And then you have one of the biggest issues in both collaborations, which is the IP issue. And this is like the very, very hard and sensitive topic, because of course the corporate wants to know, okay, what do you want to test there? Is that safe to use? Is that falling under the novel food regulations? What are you bringing in? Has that gluten? Has it not gluten? What are we doing in terms of our certification? And they have the requirements. On the other hand, we have the startup that says, wait, I don't, you can plug in the rest of our product or testings in an HPLC, and maybe you can find out what we're developing. And an NDA at the end is still a piece of paper. So how do you now make sure that you're as kind of the David against Goliath? How can you make sure that no one is kind of ripping out your pockets, ripping out your IP out of your pocket? And I think that's a very, very important question that I would love to hear also the opinion of the others. How can we make this happen? Do we always as startups need to disclose information? Because I need to try out before I patent. I need to try out if what I'm actually wanting to patent, if that's actually something I can sell. Now, I cannot, for example, guarantee that the chocolate we're making now on our own is the same than if I would plug it through a conching process. Because the conching process has a reason to exist, because it actually has and adds great value to not only the feeling you have in your mouth, but also the technical functionality of the particles you have in the chocolate, and how the fat plays together with the cacao and stuff like this. So you need to do that, because before that, maybe I'm patenting something and then it turns out, consumers will not buy it because it doesn't taste well, right? So you kind of need to have the steps before, and not it's not possible that you always come to a corporate and you already have your patent. And also not everything is patentable. I mean, for us, luckily, we are not in that category, but still there's a lot of food that cannot be patented, and that has still innovation, but there's just, you cannot patent taste, for example. Like you can patent maybe aroma combinations, but still it's quite hard and also to protect that also against corporates. So I think this is like a main point. And also it's not only about talking to end consumers. For example, like our end clients with B2B are very open because of the high USPs that we have, but it starts before, like filling up our product, mixing it. And of course, at the beginning, as a startup, you don't have the volume to pay or get the best price or even close to the best price. And often it's like, okay, if you don't produce under a ton, we cannot even do trial runs with you, because we don't go below that, or our machines don't work below that. Same goes also when working together with clients that say, look, we can do chocolate, but we need half a ton for testing. Now, if you have never tested it with 5 kilos, you probably would not want to waste 500 kilograms on a raw material just for a test that does not work out. So I think this kind of opens up several issues that we're having. Also, when we're looking about then the funding in the ecosystem and the opportunities, like we have, for example, for life science, we have Life Science Vienna. There you can do test runs, but not as a food tech, because or not in our case, because you have the risk of getting bacteria on it. It's not sterilized. It's not, we need, for example, kitchen and lab, so we needed to build it up small on our own. But you can only afford it if you have already funding, right? And that's the issue. And if not, we're again at the M&A thing. A lot of corporates only want to buy you. They don't want to do business with you. maybe like for a small time, but then if you give them a big share because they say, look, we we produce it for you at the price that you can be competitive, but then they have such a high percentage already in that it comes with exclusive rights they take away from you, it comes with IP rights they want to hold on to, it comes with for example limitations with whom you can go into a partnership, or for example that other VCs won't invest because they say, look, you already have found your exit partner that's already invested in your company, which will also then put down your valuation. So that these are the points we need to talk to. And I would, another big thing is lobbying, for example. I mean, we know that there is a huge sugar lobby out there. And it might also be that, for example, sugar, and I know a lot of good sugar producing companies we are also in talks to that are super nice, but not like in the real world, also in the corporate world, not every corporate is a nice one. So there might be corporates that say to our potential clients, look, if you collaborate with them, we kind of put up our prices and then that's it. And that's like part of the game and part of what you have to deal with. So yeah, I would love also to hear like kind of the opinions of the other two parties in here.
I mean, Richard, maybe you want to react and respond to that because you mentioned before, like the need for like a shared language and a shared understanding of like fundamental terms, but maybe you can also respond to some of the issues Lisa just raised now.
Yes, what I've seen is, so I have often come across to corporations where the motivation was big and the vision was there, but then there was something created like a superstructure, and that actually acts like a pure company management. So in other words, it's a purely top down, and I think and real cooperation and collaboration, cooperative should be so as it works on the same level, and so an approach that undermines the basis of any cooperation of working together on the same level. And so I would speak here of a cooperation which actually only creates then new dependencies, and so a lot can go wrong after that. And what I also think is that, as Lisa, thank you for that. I think it's a generation thinking too, also for why do I cooperate? And maybe we can discuss about that too, because only market thinking might not be enough, not only to be resilient in all of changing, legal changing, how many GHG emissions are possible or not, or some kind of that, but also driven by to want to make a good decision and a good work for the development of the whole society. And I think we as a, for me, I can only speak for me as an old, hardly nearly gray man, there's a little, we have, I think that the young people are thinking today different what cooperative and collaboration means. And maybe we can discuss about it a little bit more.
Wolfgang, do you want to react a bit to issues which Lisa raised? Well, if you want to say something directly.
Yeah. Well, I think I understand pretty well what Lisa is saying. You know, to my understanding, cooperation, you know, needs any kind of, let's say, business aspect. Okay, so I think this is a crucial part, and we have to face this. So cooperation without any, let's say, without any real business aspect is, at least to my understanding, I wouldn't say nearly impossible, but it's difficult. And when it comes down, you know, to real business aspects, you know, it's always a question of, you know, who is the strong one and who is the weak one. I mean, I know it sounds crazy, you know, but I faced this many times, you know, and believe me, I mean, I was the weak one, okay, because I was the small one. Yeah, I'm not complaining about this. I'm just saying it's one reality, because at the end of the day, okay, at the end of the day, if you're working with the big ones, you have to face this. And what Lisa said, you know, about IP, you know, and about this complexity of getting into volumes and so on. I mean, this is all business, you know, and it's a business aspect, you know, and we're working in an industry which is about making money. Yeah. And if we want to change something, yeah, I think we have to accept this. I mean, that's the game. Yeah. And we have to find our way through this, you know, and we have to manage this. And we have to, you know, we need this kind of sustainable route, you know, we are sticking on. Yeah. And then we can make changes step by step, maybe even with very small steps, you know, but we move ahead, you know, and we change things. And this is the way I look at it, you know, with every day and every year we exist on the market, we are doing a little bit better. I mean, this is the reality. Yeah. So however, you know, long we will be on the market, you know, every day is a good day, you know, and we are doing little changes, maybe not all the changes we could do and we should do, but nevertheless, we are moving ahead. And this is the way I look at it. And that's the way I look at cooperating. But I'm quite aware, you know, there are many pitfalls on the way. There are many pitfalls. And some of them, Lisa said, are definitely right, you know. And of course, you know, IP is one part of it. Yeah, it's really difficult. You know, if they have a great invention, you know, if they had a product they believe in, going to the big industry is not easy. Yeah, but at the end of the day, you have to take the risk. There's no way out. You have to take the risk. Of course, you know, you can get legal advice and all these things, but I'm sure Lisa will have it. But at the end of the day, it's still open, it's still a risk. And when it comes to food and patent, you know, at least this is my experience, you know, it's very difficult, you know, and nearly impossible, yeah, to really, let's say, to go for good patents. Yeah, it's very difficult, yeah, because sometimes you only need to change, you know, little things, you know, and you're completely, let's say, open. Yeah, so that's. I totally understand. It's a big challenge. Yeah.
Maybe.
Okay. Yeah, sure. Please go ahead.
Very important for me. Absolutely correct, Wolfgang. With business and economic, it's a normal thing. I think that's in our daily life when we are fair enough to say that. But are we talking now about the food system itself, or do we talk about the value chain and to earn money? And I think we have to differentiate a little bit about that. And now we talk about, I know quality assurance is hard work and to get all this legal stuff and so on. But what is our vision for the whole system? Is it to earn money, or is it to produce products that are absolutely perfect, but not only the money I get for this product, but also the way I work earns something for society and for the whole world. So I think that is what I meant before, that young people think a little bit more further, more in a system way, and they are not happy only to have the best product and sell it, but how was the production before, and how, let's say it naive and simple, how happy are my employees, yeah, and so on. So there are a lot of more we have to think about a food system and about our future and our basis for our life, meaning our food. And so maybe we can discuss a little bit more about that. That is what I meant before.
Also, what I would like to add
please.
is I think it doesn't have to, like, making money does not mean like being not sustainable. I think you can do both. And I think
absolutely, Lisa, I don't mean it. Yeah.
I also think we see that because, for example, the EU puts on regulations, for example, to show certain reports. And also we can see shifts in consumer awareness, that they care, because otherwise greenwashing wouldn't be a thing, right? It's a thing because consumers care. And if you are doing sustainable business, it might also result in higher revenues. So I think it always depends on what industry you're in. But I feel like there's a trend that's also, not everyone goes vegan, for example, just because of the things of how animals are being treated, but a lot of people go also vegan because of the CO2 print. So we also need to think about that factors that also then come to the point of if you can make revenue with something sustainable, or more revenue by focusing on not damaging the environment or not damaging consumers' health. And I think also cooperation cooperation between a startup and a corporate, or especially, you should always have on the focus of making money. But I think it should not come with ruining a small company. And it should also be possible to do and follow fair business practices and without kind of pulling someone over. Just to say that also. And also in terms of IP, what I was also thinking when being invited to the panelists, you have in Austria very nice funding programs. So you have, for example, the patent check, you have the IP, like Discover IP program. I think if there would be something like that, that comes actually like from a funding agency that would give you a certain idea of how a corporation could work, I think that could be very beneficial and maybe ease the way, and by providing a certain framework that could be followed, and by adapting to the key points that you always have when it comes to cooperation, like all the points, for example, that Wolfgang mentioned, that they are kind of included, giving like a short draft that makes it easier.
Thanks a lot, Lisa, because that's a perfect transition to my next set of questions. But before I come up with that, I would like to remind the audience that you can ask your questions to all of us, put them into the Q&A section down below, and then we will address them and try to answer them after we conclude the panel. My last set of questions for our last round would be related to what you just said, and then what all of you brought up already before. So it would be like, it's a twofold question. Like, what do you think are the prerequisites for a meaningful, sustainable form of collaboration? And twofold in a way that on the one hand, maybe you can think about and discuss what does it take from the collaborators, from the really directly involved parties of a collaboration, but also looking at the bigger picture in terms of policies, frameworks, prerequisites, funding opportunities, research opportunities, which could facilitate cooperation. And maybe, Richard, I would like to start with you. Maybe you can give us your take on what you think are the prerequisites for successful, sustainable collaboration in the food system.
Yeah, thank you. In my opinion, we have talked about money and business and so on, and that's absolutely correct. And when I'm on farms and assess sustainability there, we also have this discussion about biodiversity and so on. And I said, no, it's not sustainability. It doesn't mean we want to save nature. Sustainability means that our society can be successful in the long term for next generation and so on. So this is a very important issue. And to know that and to work like that, what does that mean for a company, for a profit company who needs to earn money? So I think the framework, the legal framework, should be give them the opportunity to make mistakes, say it easy like that, and to learn from that, and to have time to be very open-minded, to say we as a company are not ready for the sustainability transformation, but we work on that with really effort, and that needs money, as Wolfgang said, as Lisa said, and this needs time. So I think maybe thinking about collaboration above the value chain is needed. So to speak with maybe some kind of alien like me or other researchers and so on, or some other NGOs or some kind of that, to find an open discussion and to see what, because you lose the big picture when you have to do your daily work as a researcher. And I think a good collaboration has to last more than after finishing one product, and then it could be something that helps us to transform the whole food system. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Lisa, if you could wish for something when thinking about collaboration with partners, be it a research institute, be it another business, not only thinking about corporates, but also SMEs, for example, what are you wishing for? What would you need to be sustainably successful when cooperating?
So one thing is, I think corporates should be more brave to try out. I feel like they always have like the saying, like never touch a running system, but what if it stops running? And I think that's exactly, we see based on the US, I have to mention them there, that it works brilliant to do corporations, and even huge companies, especially in the automobile industry, are doing huge corporations with each other, and it often works out quite well. So I think in Europe, and especially in Austria, where we sometimes always only see the small picture, I think it's extremely necessary to collaborate, and to collaborate with startups that bring in the value, and to see that value, and to make things a bit less complicated. And one thing could be, for example, and I think REVE is a great example for that. We're not B2C, but I think REVE, for example, has an innovation manager that clearly stands out for startups. And that's something that big corporates could do. Like, for example, Markus Kundke is responsible for everything in terms of the innovation and startup service management within the huge corporate. That's what huge corporates can do. Now, what can medium enterprises do? I feel like to have a person in charge for innovation that understands a bit the landscape, and to understands a bit the flexibility and brings in the mindset. I think a lot is about understanding, and a lot is that corporates understand also what's in for them. What is the value that a startup can bring, and why does it make sense to work on a long-term collaboration rather than just, you know, sharing small detailed plans and then never something gets executed. Like, for example, outsourcing projects. It doesn't have to be the full business where you do a collaboration from. It can be a small part. Like, for example, let's find out how we get the particular size of our sugar substitute so small that it, for example, fits into a jam. How can we, for example, doing studies on the microbiome, like how does it affect the microbiome, or working on with farmers, actually working together with institutions like the one of Richard, to look at, okay, how can we separate, for example, the proteins from the fibers? What is the approach that farmers have? I feel like there's so many projects within innovative startups that you could really do a cooperation on without giving out the whole IP of the whole startup, but rather like doing it project-based, because I feel like the more you dive into a problem, the more problems evolve and the more opportunities are also to solve them. So I think maybe you can start with just a small point, and then you see already, and you can test also, that's at least what we do. How does the corporate interact with us on that small problem? And if it is successful, you can of course stretch it to different areas. But I think that's like, yeah, and that also corporates think through that. How do they want to interact with startups? I always feel like, okay, this is we as a startup, this is the corporate, and it feels like I'm bumping in a tree with a car. Like, whoops, it doesn't go more. There's no street going somewhere. And if they could already discuss that, how are we dealing with startups? I think that would already give both parties more speed to get faster results. and to be open about that, also with the bureaucracy. For every decision, someone head of something, CEO needs to be asked. If you already clear up what is okay to do and what not, it could be, of course, also faster. And another thing is, like, I'm wishing for the institutions and the funding systems in Austria to think more about food tech. I feel like with that all AI and software as a service and all those cool stuff, fintech, I feel like food tech gets a bit of underrepresented and loved above. And I feel like we always need to come back. What are the things we daily do? And one of that is eating. We don't survive without it. We might survive without a bank account, pretty sure, but we don't survive without food. And we eat daily, and we eat a lot daily. So I think it's like a topic that really needs to be addressed more. Also in terms of the infrastructure we provide for giving startups the opportunity to validate prototypes. Yeah, one last thing is also in terms of the corporations, as I mentioned before, if there would be sort of a draft or some party that comes like a mediator in the play, like, for example, AWS could do, I think that's a very nice one. And I think once the Vienna Business Agency actually had that open, it was called Research Cooperation, and it was not between, it was not really to fund like big projects between corporates and startups, but I think it was more about like getting out research. But I think putting a framework like that in where you say, okay, we fund partly the process of startups meeting corporates and the time they might lose out on something else would maybe also give an incentive for corporates to talk more to startups. Exactly.
Okay, thank you. Wolfgang, what is your take on that? I know you relatively recently entered as an SME a cooperation with a small producer based in Vienna. But what is it you think is necessary on the sides of the cooperating parties, but also in the contextual field for establishing successful cooperations?
Well, as Lisa said, getting more people in who are brave, is definitely helpful, for everybody. So I totally believe that we are probably not brave enough. So I'm really supporting this. Well, at least from my side, I think that we should all accept that the food system needs to look a little bit less on profits. Okay, yeah. I mean, we have to understand food business is a 1,000 billion business across the world. It's the largest industry we have in the world. Yeah. We usually forget about this. We are talking about IT and, automobile and so on, but it's food. Yeah. Food is by far the largest industry. And it's a lot about money. Yeah, which in general, I mean, I accept this. Okay, I'm running companies in 30 years as well, and I'm not complaining about making money. I'm just saying, I think we need to accept that if you want to make good food, yeah, and if you want to make sustainable food, you will earn less money. And that's not easy, to convince people, to convince big corporates they should live with lower margins. Yeah, but that's the way it is. Yeah. So I think the optimizing, the whole process, the whole distribution process, the whole logistic process, to get down margins would help everybody a lot. Yeah. And this is what we are focusing on. I'm trying to optimize ourselves, getting ourselves smaller and smaller. I mean, that's a fact, that's a reality. The more efficient we are, the better actually at the end of the day can be our pricing on the market. The more people will buy it. But of course, it means that we make less money. I'm prepared to do this. As long as we go ahead, as long as we survive as a company, it's fine for me. And as long as I have a good living, it's fine for me as an entrepreneur as well. Yeah. But I don't see many people out there like this. I see a lot of greed, even in food. And this makes things complicated. But this is not only in food; it's in the whole world. And if we're talking about sustainability, fighting greed would help us a lot, and I think this is also reflecting to what Richard said, to me, greed is, the biggest problem we have right now in our economic system, and food is part of it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Thank you. Thanks for now to the three of you. I think we could have a look at the questions we received. There is a couple of them, I see. Petra, you want to
sure.
have a look at them? And
we have one particular question for Lisa, and Johannes is asking, how did you approach corporates with ideas for cooperation? I think it has also the component of whom are you talking to, and how do you get your role in there?
Yeah, I think whom are you talking to? I think it really matters. I think you cannot say each corporate is like each other, because also the people you talk to are human beings. So it always matters. So the person you speak to, how open are they? How is their kind of mindset from within the company that's also reflecting on them? I think, of course, luck is one thing, but the other thing is also you need to think about what value do you actually provide them. Like, don't pitch them like an investor. We're gonna be this and we're gonna be that, and we will deliver this and that. Sometimes I think because we do a lot of pitching events, startups often do that, and we also talk a lot to different investors. I think you really need to know that it's different to speak to actual customers. Like, what do you bring them, and what do you bring the person you talk to? What is the value you add for them? How do you create value? Really dig deep into what is the company already offering? How are the solutions that you provide, how are they different than what they're already kind of using? What's different in for them? And try to make it as easy for them to understand it. We food tech startups always want to prove that we're tech and that we're so complicated and we're so good and we spend 3 years on research, but at the end, the person you speak to is often the head of sales and is not often the head of product that also has like the technology understanding. So really make it as easy as possible. And then I think you also need to hold on to it. And really, sometimes they tend to forget if you're at a big exhibition. Sometimes literally they talk to 100, 200 people, and then they don't think about the small startup that was just there. Sometimes they do, and they're really, in our case, there are really a lot of companies that do come back. But I think if not, you always need to push forward and ask for it and speak to that. Sometimes you spoke to the wrong person, like the exhibition, so it also makes sense to reach out to them. Like with investors also, I think if you get a warm intro from someone you've met that knows someone, that's always easier, but really try to identify with that company. It's like sending out a CV to a corporate and saying, I want to work with you, and you write it with ChatGPT. You probably won't get the job. So really try to be extremely specific about why they should collaborate with them and what is in and what have you planned. I think that's how you can actually succeed. And sometimes we just need to accept that we cannot convince everyone, and that's also fine. And you need to be resistant. So I always say that sometimes, it might be that you talk to 20 people and everyone says no. Then don't give up, because what if the other next 2 people say yes? So I think it's also kind of the way. Take their feedback. I also think that it's important to get feedback early on. You don't need to sell at the exactly first moment. Sometimes it's just about to prove and validate your hypothesis. Like, is that actually really a customer? And really do that early on, because otherwise you end up building something that nobody wants. And that's like the worst thing ever. So make sure also to ask them the right questions. Don't only talk about yourself, but also ask them what they want from you and what they are looking for. Yeah.
Yeah, sounds good, Lisa. And I want to mention also Florian, who has not really put a question, but a statement that we should understand, and it goes directly in the same direction as Lisa was saying. Florian was basically mentioning that it's so important that you need to clearly understand the value you, as a smaller part, bring to the larger part, so that you can create a win-win position. I also like this a lot that Florian brought it up, even if it's not a question, so that there is some encouraging words over here also, that collaborations can be also successful, although there are a lot of work. Then we have another question. Maybe that's a little bit in the direction of Wolfgang, but you decide whether you want to answer it. Craig is basically asking, how do you deal with specific cultural challenges between smaller organizations and larger organizations when they collaborate? You were mentioning, Wolfgang, already some stuff about values, objective alignment, but then also on operations, that it's critical to align and have a plan for that. But the question is mainly about cultural challenges. Did you experience this in your collaborations, or is this something that's a minor part?
No, it's not. It's not. I think culture, at the end of the day, is a very important part. And of course, big companies have a different culture. But again, I think you have to accept that cultures are different. Yeah. And if we want to change, you have to do it in small steps. That's the way I looked at it. And I think that's one of the good things, I've seen with Kellogg, the years they have spent with us and the people who have spent time with us, I think we really had an impact on them. Yeah. And there are many people within the Kellogg organization, who said after our cooperation that we and our cooperation gave them a completely new vision, on how food can work, and how cooperation can work, and how entrepreneurial work can actually be. So I totally believe it's different. I believe, if you move ahead in small steps, it makes sense for both sides. But of course, it's different. And again, this is something you have to accept.
Maybe that fits also a little bit into what Lisa was saying. You can start with smaller things, try it out, see how it works out, because you can't decipher everything on paper. When you're talking to people, you need to live through it. And then maybe from there, see whether you can collaborate more. And the cultural check, apart from a value check, might be something that's really important, right?
Maybe I can add one thing here, because to my understanding, this was really important, especially the small ones, they are used to take risk. Yeah, the small ones are used, to try things out, even if it's not proved. So what Lisa said, brave are probably the small ones. Yeah. And I think one of the reasons why the big ones want the small ones is this, because we are faster, we are more easy in invention, we have more fun, probably, what I mean, trying things out. But then if it's not working, even saying, well, yeah, sorry, it didn't work. You know what I mean? I'm used to it, to say, sorry, guys, didn't work. Yeah. When you're working in a large corporation, it's probably a little bit more difficult, because then people are looking at you, saying, hey, come on, it didn't work. When you're a small organization, nobody's saying this. I think this is the kind of advantage we have, as a small corporation, as small companies, and this really helps us, getting things, probably a little bit faster ahead.
Yeah, totally agree. Thanks, Wolfgang. We have another question from Jordan. He is asking very specifically, I suppose, to the whole panelists, but maybe it's a question a little bit more in the direction of Richard also. He's asking whether there is also collaboration in the food system between businesses that want to improve by sharing data. Does this take place, and how does this work? So is there a data exchange? He gives some examples like provenance of ingredients from suppliers, purchasing patterns from consumers. Is this shared then with suppliers? So is there anything going on data sharing at all? Because we didn't have the topic in the discussion. Yeah, that's quite true. Richard, have you come across anything like that in all your research and your work?
A lot of that data sharing and understand how the system is working. And the answer to that question is not very easy. I think as we have the discussion before of food safety, I think that's the same of data sharing. A lot of data doesn't help anything if you don't have the question you want to answer, and if you don't have the direction or the aim to do that and to read the data. But as an open source system, that the food system could be open source system, I think could be a big vision. But what does that mean? That I think it's a little bit, and I want to think like that, but it's a little bit naive to think that transparency in all cases makes sense and would be good for the whole business. And I think there must be some kind of stop of transparency, but in the way of thinking not. And data sharing, as it is public money that has, as in my case as a researcher, that I know there's some data available and I earned the money because of some funding and public funding, then I think this data should be available for everyone, yes, and makes sense.
Wolfgang, is this more like secret source, any data out of your business? And because I would think that it is like very specifically you would decide whether to share data on consumer behavior or patterns or producers that manufacturers or food providers that you're using before you do that, or does this happen?
Yeah. Well, in my case, okay, and I think I can only talk about my cases and my company. I think we have no relevant data, okay, which would help anybody. Yeah, it's more, you know, it's our data, it's about our company, it's about our details, our sales channels and things like this. That's nice, you know what I mean? And that's probably nice for our competition, but it doesn't help anybody, okay? And it doesn't make things better. So I think, frankly speaking, in my case, I have no relevant data in my company, which would help to transform the system. Yeah, and therefore I think I have no real, you know, opinion on this right now.
And Lisa, you were mentioning already topics like sharing information, not really data, but information, even in the direction of stuff that could be in the future patented, and it's a very tricky topic for you. Is this something, data requests, etc., that you encounter when you're working with larger organizations? Are they curious about that side?
Yes. So, I mean, there were really big corporations. I think once we won our first competition, like we got invited by the Chinese government last November, because we won a competition and it went really crazy. So there are a lot of corporates approached us and were straight about the like IP, send us NDAs that were not that good. Some of them were okay, but a lot of them were not protective. So I think it is indeed a thing, and especially when you're right at the beginning, you might be naive enough to think that they are just curious and won't do anything with your data. Of course, they want to know what you're working on, and of course, they have the better lawyers. So I think you need to be sensitive when it comes to IP, but there's a lot of stuff that is not IP, you know? There's a lot of things you can still share, and there's a lot you can learn from each other. I think saying that there's nothing interesting that would be worth mentioning, for example, is not completely true, because, for example, what matters is, for example, what is your CO2 print? Do you track that in your company? How do you get that data, for example? I think that's something that a lot of companies are now approaching as quite of a challenge. Where do I get that data from? What I can also say is, in terms of startups, I think here not in regards to what you want to patent, but in general, like talking to other food tech startups is a game changer, because we kind of all face similar facts. And for example, we are now in the EIT Food Incubation, the European program. And there, for example, we talk to startups that are using the protein out of a plant where we would like to get something else from. So definitely it makes totally sense. And I also think to open up or to talk about your idea is always a good choice. And there's still like corporates, we work together, we talk a lot about techno functionality and what, for example, brings sugar in, what do we need to bring in, what is their approach, how is their research phase going. So there's a lot you can talk to. Just don't talk about the process, how you get to the product, but you can of course say what it will be able to do or how you test certain things. I think not otherwise if it would be otherwise, I mean, you could patent probably 30-50 things in your company if there's nothing you can actually talk openly about it. So I do think there's an enough space to share data, also with corporates, and we've also done that, just not in regards to what we want to patent. And I think it helps. For example, the pricing. I mean, sugar is extremely cheap. Sugar substitutes are normally 4 to 5 times more expensive. It makes, of course, sense. Like, for example, if I'm thinking that Wolfgang is having cereals and I would like to do a cooperation with him, maybe. We didn't talk about that yet. But here we have the topic. Now I would go and ask, okay, how much, for example, do you pay for sugar? How much would you pay for a sugar substitute? How much margin do you need, for example? These are questions that I need to know, because I want to know if my customer can actually make money if he buys in our product as a raw material. So especially when it comes to corporations in that sense, on a client base, I think there's a lot of questions and data that needs to be also shared in order to make sure you are a fit.
I want to say to that, Petra, if I can.
Yeah, sure. Jump in.
Because what I find out is also that if you share some interesting examples or data you have with others, maybe in the same level of business or some kind of that, so kind of competition, but maybe after this discussion with this other person, this other company, you will find a new view of your findings, and maybe you find out that everything you have seen on your data and your development can be seen differently, and so you can also learn something in that discussion. Yeah, but that is a way of very complete different of hard competition. I'm sure that's not that easy. Yeah?
Yeah, but at least it opens up a room, right, for discussion, having an open-mindedness about the data of different ones and looking into it. We have had a lot of discussion about small ones and big ones. We haven't discussed anything about maybe mid-sized companies or SMEs in the whole game, or other parties in the ecosystem that could maybe collaborate. And in this direction goes the question of an anonymous attendee. Didn't know, Michi, that we have anonymous people also in the room. Doesn't matter. The question is, it would be interesting to hear about the other actors in the food system, not just startups and big corporates, it should be, and potentials for collaboration. So my question to the round is, anybody has done collaboration in any kind with an SME? For example, research companies we had, Lisa, you were mentioning, right? I suppose Wolfgang also is working with research organizations. Anything else? So not just the big and the small ones, but maybe on equal level. Does anybody want to jump in?
I could give it a go, because when we think about the food system, I mean, you have like many different actors. One type, for example, is civil society organizations. There are many NGOs and non-profits working in the food system. I mean, we touched upon that a bit in the discussion. Policymakers are extremely relevant in the food system. So I'm part of a civil society organization as well, and we work with the city of Vienna. And the city of Vienna is an important player in the food system because the city feeds 200,000 people every day in canteens, in hospitals, in schools, in care facilities, etc. And decisions there are being made by politicians, by administrators, etc. So you have that as well. And of course, you have policymakers on all levels of the food system, regional, national, and supranational, like the European Union, for example. And then also there, I can tell you, like cooperating, for example, as a small NGO with a big organization like a city government, for example, is not easy.
And we haven't spoken about, Michael, about the fact that we lose a lot of farms in Austria. We have not a lot of farms, and that is the fundament. And as I'm working on sustainability and you know, the problem with this wording and to understand what does that mean, and why not think a little bit further for the food system for some other translators, maybe arts. Why not arts? Why don't we collaborate with artists and so on, not for branding, but to find our way and so on. So I think we have to open that actors in the food system a little bit more, maybe.
And you have also like a lot of like social businesses and social enterprises, cooperative supermarkets, so like alternative concepts to the mainstream retail system, or you have like food banks, and I mean, they also play an important role in diversifying the food system.
I also feel like that one
Maybe
is, for example, the government. Also, the government can have quite a lot of an impact on how business is done or how things are subsidized. So especially when we talk about subsidization, I mean, when we think about how many diseases we have that come from an overconsumption of sugar and that are growing in the next 20 years to an extent where we will have to focus on if the health insurance we are offering is even though if we can still kind of afford that, then I'm thinking about, okay, the government can subsidize great solutions that benefit the overall well-being not only of the planet but also of the people. And I think that also the government should take on a certain responsibility to make it easier for those solutions to be affordable by consumers.
Fully agree. Fully agree. I think we need any kind of tax sugar. Yeah. We need to put different taxes on sugar. It doesn't make sense to keep it like the way it is. Yeah. And I think we have seen this in some countries already, and I hope it will come to us as well. Another thing is, it probably, milk has 10% VAT, and plant-based milk has 20%. That's ridiculous. It's ridiculous, and it's since years, and we all know it. We all face it every day.
Yeah.
It's only lobbying. It's only lobbying. Yeah. So, well, I think there could be a lot of pressure, to really move ahead, with this agenda. And this is really doable. I mean, the same is on energy and so on. So I think there's a lot doable. But maybe one more word, on cooperation. I think if you cooperate, with equal partners, it's much easier, and therefore I think it's probably not so important for the discussion right here, because when you're dealing with people, who are more or less the same size, you know what I mean? It's a different game, yeah. And therefore, that's why I'm not talking about this so much. But this is working. This is important for all of us. I do a lot of cooperation, with let's say similar companies in distribution, in logistics, in sourcing. So this is vital. This is working, and I think, especially the younger generation is probably more open to this than the older generation, because, the older generation always had the feeling that they have to hide something. So I think that's a very positive effect, especially about younger people. They are much more open, to go into this type of corporations. But usually that's really a much, much easier deal than with working with the big ones.
And I think, Wolfgang, it's also important if we took the principle of sufficiency out. I think when you go in a collaboration, in a cooperative, you must be clear that you are ready to go 2 steps back when that's needed, and to took you also back when it's too fast for your partner and so on. So I think that's also a way of thinking. Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah, thanks, Wolfgang, also for pointing this out so that we don't depress too much our audience. That collaboration is a really tough topic, but there is also possibilities. Yeah. But I have two additional remarks in the questions that came in, which are of people quite disappointed, saying, if this is so difficult to work between startups and large corporations, is there any chance to make this work? And therefore, I think not really needed to answer this in detail, but having these encouraging words from you, Wolfgang, that working with similar-sized companies is really a good approach in order to get also some experience in collaborating, because it might have a learning curve also, I suppose.
Well, I think there are different aspects of this. First of all, when I'm looking back, and when I'm looking at my cooperation with Kellogg, I'm quite happy. I'm quite happy that I had the chance to do it. We have all learned a lot. We changed as a company, and many changed to the good. Okay, of course, I didn't talk that much about it today, but many changed to the good. And it made us even more resistant. As a company. So I'm not saying it's not good at the end. I'm just saying it's not easy. Yeah, I think at the end of the day, it probably doesn't make sense. Even for me as a businessman, I didn't want this because it's my life. You know what I mean? It's my job. It's my everyday routine. And I didn't want it anymore, But of course, people are different and everybody has a different agenda, and maybe somebody else, would have succeeded, in this cooperation and maybe would be happy to leave the company and to sell it. This was not my agenda. You know what I mean? I didn't want this. Yeah. But I'm not saying that it's not working. I'm just saying it's a challenge. I would like to stress out, what are the key issues and maybe help people, find the right deal, because I think it is doable. But of course, then you have to make the rules in the beginning and not at the end. That's why I'm saying it's good to negotiate, contracts, and do all the legal stuff. And of course, you have to do all, due diligence work and so on. But you need to sit down and look at operation. Yeah. And I think if you do it not afterwards, but before, yeah, it's much, much bigger chance, to succeed. So there are learnings, and this part why I'm here, because I would like to share these learnings, because I think at the end you can do it better. Yeah, and of course, both sides have to change, but I totally believe you can do it better. Everybody can do it better, and so therefore I'm not pessimistic at all. Yeah.
Then I truly appreciate it. Yeah, that you're sharing. That you're sharing also the learnings over here.
I think, Petra, can I add something? And I think that we talk a lot about, let's call it horizontal collaborations along on the same value chain step. And I think the vertical collaboration, we have not discussed about that together with agriculture, together with other actors on the value chain, because what Wolfgang is telling is the same step. I would say it's horizontal collaboration, and I think it could be a little bit different, as I would say that the transformation for food system has to be in a collaboration way point. No other possibilities there. Maybe not on the same step of a value chain, but in a vertical thinking for sure. Yes.
Then I would like to jump over to a rather specific question of another attendee who wants to stay anonymously. The person is basically saying, my food and social impact startup is looking for a strategic partner or investor, but I'm worried that we will be swallowed up, lose control, and that our core purpose will become diluted or unrecognizable when teaming up with a bigger, stronger partner. There is no question in there, but there is a lot of worries. We had this situation somehow, what you were also explaining, Wolfgang, that at a certain point of time when the company was bought, the question was whether the brand would survive, right? And then you bought it back also. And Lisa, you were also mentioning a little bit the example of talking to corporates, and in the end, they just want to acquire you, and that's it. So maybe I can hear a little bit your of your perspectives, Wolfgang.
Well, I think the first question is, I don't know the business, the guy is talking about them, but is it really necessary to get a strategic partner, or is it only about money? Okay, because that's completely different. Okay, if you get a strategic partner, it's two different things, and it's completely separated. So if you go for money, it's a different issue. Okay, and going for money and getting money, I think you should not be, afraid that they take anything. Okay, because they are happy if you succeed, and they let things with you, and you can go ahead.
Yeah.
With a strategic partnership, it's different, or it could be different. But the question is, do I really need a strategic partnership? And therefore, I think it would be interesting to understand a little bit better is it really necessary? At which stage are they right now? Yeah. Because this is what I have seen. If you have a strategic partnership, you are in the same sector, you know, you have a similar interest, yeah, but it's still probably not exactly the same. And it could happen that the guy or the company you're joining, you know, has a second agenda, yeah, a kind of hidden agenda. This is maybe, let's say, the biggest threat, yeah. But first, I think you should look, is it really necessary at the stage my company is in right now to get a strategic partner, yeah?
Yeah, fully agree, yeah. Two different things. Lisa, from your point of view, because you were mentioning this a little bit also at the beginning when we kicked off discussions today, strategic partnerships, how difficult is it from a startup with a most likely larger organization and to decipher the hidden agenda that they might have?
So I think if we're now talking about a strategic partnership, I mean, if it would not be a strategic partnership, it would just be an investment, and then I would need the corporate to be in the food sector if it's just about money. So normally you take a strategic partner because you want more than money, and because you benefit of the person you're working with. Of course, it can also be an investor, for example, that's in the food industry or in the beverage industry, but that would never be an end client, for example, of us. Maybe that changes the game, but still, if it's someone that's a manufacturing partner and therefore then also strategically helping us, it's always about, okay, how do I benefit more? If someone gives me the infrastructure or gives me the money, sometimes the money would not be enough, or the valuation I could offer, for example, to get 10 million to build up a whole infrastructure to do huge scaling of volumes, that does not really, you know, is not really on the same step, or would not happen just because it doesn't.
But Lisa,
yeah.
Lisa, no, I think the biggest threat is, for example, okay, if your company is getting any kind of alliance with one of the big sugar producers, okay, this is exactly the kind of cooperation I'm talking about. This is a big threat, okay, and this can be very difficult. But I think there are many other companies around, you know, who are interested in your segment but have no competition at all. So therefore, I think, you know, strategic partnership. Any other company who is not interested in sugar as sugar, okay? So if they are in the sugar industry and if they want to sell sugar, you know, of course they can probably, I don't know, you know, somehow try to influence you, yeah? But if they are producing products, yeah, with sugar and with other products as well, you know, they can be very helpful, you know, and they have no competition with you at all, yeah?
I think that, yeah. I mean, I know sounds logical, but now if we think about, for example, you're a cereal producer, and I would say, look, I work together with you, and now you use our sugar substitute, and now another cereal producer, let's say Kellogg's, comes and they say, look, we would like to use that, and you as a strategic investor might say, well, no, because I'm the only one who wants that advantage, and that happens.
No, I agree. Yeah, no, I agree. But I mean, you know, this is part of the legals, you know, and you have to make sure that you're allowed to do this. I mean, this is one of the things I was allowed, by the way, you know what I mean? And it was quite interesting to see. Kellogg was very easy on this, you know, very easy. I mean, we have been minority shareholder. We have only 49%. Kellogg had 51%, but we could more or less do whatever we wanted. You know? So I think this is doable. Yeah.
But that's not a trust.
But the question
thing,
is,
right?
you know,
because if you give 51% of your company to a corporate, you're not running it anymore. Not really. Just if you have, I mean, in your case it worked out, but I'm just wondering, and how many cases does it actually?
Of course, it is risky. No, you're right. It's risky. Of course, it's risky. It's risky. Yeah. And I'm not recommending anybody, okay, to sell 51% of the company. Okay, so this is not my recommendation. Okay, I did it, but I'm not recommending this. Yeah, and you should do it as well. Yeah? But I'm just saying, you know, I think there is a way to cooperate which could work as long as they are not really in the same sector. But of course, it's always a question of details. Yeah.
I mean, I also have to say that we are right now in that phase. I mean, one thing is like we're now fundraising. And I think that's exactly like the phase where you have all those talks with corporates. And also, I think the difficulty is maybe not like that you cooperate together and that they want to, because they're very, very nice companies that we are quite in good negotiations with. But it's also about they want to know what they invest in. So they want to know the IP. Now, if you have not patented yet, why would you then invest if you cannot fully see what they do? And I think this is the issue. It's not the issue that they don't like or that they are competition, but it's about they need to understand what we do to invest a lot of money in our business. And for that, we have, again, the IP conflict.
That's difficult. I agree.
And it's really, yeah, this is, but this is
it's difficult.
Because other than that,
fully agree.
Exactly. But in order to get that IP, you need to do all those tests. You need to prove that it works, and you need the money to afford those patents. And that's then the hard part, because that's exactly what you're looking, what you need the investment for also. And therefore it's really, really
it's a circle. That's a circle.
It's a circle, exactly.
This is tricky.
I think it really takes trust, and I think that's where it really comes down to who are you talking to. And also, I think that's also what I recommend startups is look at the portfolio companies. If they have already done this, and I would probably be looking for the ones that already did strategic investments, talk to those companies, how are they going? How did they develop? How did it end? I think that's exactly like the traction. And also, startups tend to make themselves small. You go there and you're like, I'm asking for help. Like, I'm not asking for help. I know I have a very good product. And if you would like to execute that with us, you're more than welcome to come into talks, but I'm not going to lower my standards, because I think there are a lot of amazing companies. And if that one company is not willing to do that, the world is so big, I will find the right partner to open it up. So therefore, I think it's very important as a startup to also understand what value you bring to the table, and do not accept offers that will damage it on the long run.
Well said. I would like to take in one last question from the audience. It's from Julia from the company Simeon, and she asks a specific question about biocertification. It feels a little bit hard to collaborate with small regional farmers, which might be not biocertified because it is too expensive. But this means then we would need to work with bigger companies. Is there any way or any experience here in the panelists how this could work out? And maybe it's a question for Wolfgang and Richard. So biocertification, smaller farmers, expensive process.
Wolfgang, you want to?
Well, we are constantly thinking, about the way how we could probably, let's say, extend our range, beyond organic, to be open for those kind of corporations. But as long as we have the kind of regulations we have right now here in Europe and in Austria, I think it's really very difficult to get this on the ground and to get this going. There has been a quite interesting project by Kellogg in the US, because they supported farmers on the transition phase, from non-organic into organic, which was really quite interesting a few years ago. Again, not easy, to really, let's say, do this on the long run. And sometimes, it's a great idea, but it's hard to keep this. But I think this could be one way, to give a better support on this, and I think when it comes to organic, we have to understand that at the end of the day, it probably needs more than certifications, and right now we are putting a lot of effort on certifications, and that's probably not enough.
Yes, and
let's say that this doesn't give the full picture.
We're talking about certification. I think that is here the issue, and not about organic production, but I'm very happy that now in the end we talk about process quality and not only product quality and so on. So organic farming is a good process quality of agriculture, but certification. So I think the question is not an European issue, because the certification for an European farm is not the problem. I think to make that it's a problem maybe in Africa or maybe in Asia and so on. But what is this EU organic certification? It's for the European market, I would say. It's that we have, and that's very important, the same standard organic production and to be assured as a consumer that this is organic. But now at the end, I want to say again, please think about the food system. And the food system doesn't end in Europe or in my home. And food system also means that other countries and other areas of our world has enough to eat. And when they can produce, I don't know in which kind of experiment, everyone is certificated organic and they produce for European market, for example, that doesn't make sense in the food system in their countries. We have to be aware of that. And that is a sustainable food system that is thinking as in a global view and act locally. That's very important, I think.
Well, thanks a lot. With this, I would like to close the Q&A session and hand back to Michael on the last part.
Yeah, thanks so much to our panelists for the very engaging discussion and also for the audience for the question. We would like to actually close with a short announcement from the side of Konsultori, because we have something in mind. Petra?
Yes. We have seen a little bit with the discussion today that collaboration is a huge topic, might be something that would help the whole food ecosystem, but might help also single players in the market. So we have decided to set up a food collaboration alliance, especially for startups and SMEs, because we would like to foster not only the discussion, but enable also collaboration in the market with a lot of opportunities. So if you're interested to learn more about it, please drop us a note at Michi's email address. That's michael.kubiena@konsultori.com, and we'll be happy to facilitate some collaborations in the industry.
Thanks, Petra. Thanks a lot again to Lisa, Wolfgang, and Richard, and to the audience. And I wish everybody a nice evening in Vienna. It's dry today, so no risk of rain. Thanks, everybody. I hope you enjoyed the discussion. We did. And take care and have a good evening.
Thank you much. Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.